In this video, we're going to have a quick look at using MIDI instruments in Logic Pro X. So if you're using Logic Pro X in your composition unit in S1 and S2, you can obviously use loops to form part of your composition, which is this little button over here, which is a different video. But if you're wanting to actually write your own melodies, then you'd have to do that using what is known as MIDI. And to do that, this is your starting from scratch, your blank Logic project. Instead of clicking audio, you would select software instrument. So you can see that the options are slightly different. You need to make sure that default patch is selected. So software instrument, default patch should automatically come up, and then click create. If you've already got some audio tracks in, maybe you've been using some loops, you can add in software instruments by clicking the plus button here. So now I'm going to go to the plus button, make sure software instrument is selected, and create, and I can have another one there. I can have as many as I want. I can click on the duplicate button as well, and that's going to create the same as what I've already created. So when you're adding in a software instrument track, it automatically defaults to classic electric piano, which if I get my keyboard up by pressing Command and K, sounds a little bit like that. So for an orchestral instruments project isn't ideal. You wouldn't normally find an electric piano in the orchestra. So if you look on the left-hand side, you can see that I've got a whole bunch of different options and menus. Now, here I've got orchestral instruments, which gives me all the different orchestral sections and gives me a lot of different tools to play with. So I can have a go at, let's go with strings, I think. Let's go with strings, and you can see that it's not just a case of violins, violas, cellos and double basses. You can see I've got a variety of different sounds. Violins 1, violins 2, violas are there. I've got cellos and basses are there, but I can also experiment with these options in the middle, which give me a combination of different sounds basically. So I'm going to select violins 1. It's going to load the audio there, load the audio file. And then I can play that using the notes on my computer keyboard. So I can either click it with my mouse, or I can actually press the keyboard. There we go. So once I've set up my instruments, so let's say I might want, let's go to orchestral and put some brass in there. Let's have some trumpets. Let's have this one. We could have, what could we have? Let's put a harp. You get the idea. So once I've kind of selected what instruments I want, I can start to kind of experiment, creating a sound that I like. And once I've come up with a melody or some chords that I want to record, all I need to do, make sure my playhead is in the correct place, and I'll move that to one side, click record, it'll give me a quick count in, and then I can just record whatever it is that I've come up with. So as an example, there we go. So I hit a few wrong notes in that. So my next step is to go into my recording that I've just made by double clicking on it. Now you can see that I started a little bit late. So what I'm actually going to do now, I'm going to get rid of my keyboard because now I'm going to edit this. Here's all my notes, all the notes that I played. Let's just move those down slightly. But you can see that I started a little bit late. So my first step is going to be to grab all of those. So I'm going to select them by doing Command and A. You can see that they've all got a slightly lighter color. I'm going to drag them over to the left so that they actually start right at the beginning of the piece. Now the next thing is that if you have a close look at some of these, you can see that that one, for example, isn't lining up perfectly with where it should be. So now I'm going to select them all again, Command and A, and I'm going to click the Q button over here. And that is going to line all of these notes up with these thin grey lines here so that they're perfectly in time with each other. So hit Q, you'll see them move slightly, and there we go. So now they should all be hopefully in time. So I've adjusted the position of them, I've made them so that they're all in time. The last thing I need to do is, if you remember, this big long note here wasn't the one I meant to hit. So all I'm going to do is drag that up one step so that it's changing from a B to a C. There we go. And that's it. I've recorded my audio. So you can combine that with loops that you've already used, or you can just use this from scratch. That's absolutely fine. I've got one last thing to show you, so let's just get rid of this project. Now this is a project that I just made earlier very quickly. Oh, let's show you that. it's got 4 different sections. So I've got an intro section, verse section, chorus section, and then an outro section there. So 4 slightly different sections. I've got different instruments. So I've got strings, I've got basses, I've got woodwind, I've got some percussion, so some mallets there. And then this one's kind of a combination between strings and piano as well. That one sounds quite nice. But the interesting thing about these different instruments is that these, let me just tidy this up a little bit. These are what are known as arpeggiators, which if you look on our menu over here on the left-hand side, you can see that there's an arpeggiator option down on the left-hand side. So if I select string ensemble, for example, let's get my keyboard back up by pressing Command and K. If I press one note, you can hear it plays a combination of different sounds, and I can play multiple notes at the same time, and the sound is going to flick between each of those different ones. So if I play, for example, a C major chord, C, E, and G, it creates a nice kind of varied sound, and it'll kind of in that chord automatically, which gives me quite a lot of options. So I can, for example, start with a C chord, change to an F chord, up to a G chord, and back to C. So you can use arpeggiators to really kind of thicken up your piece, and with very kind of limited keyboard skills, you can make it sound really kind of advanced. So this is what kind of one that I made earlier. It's still quite basic. We've got strings at the top there, and then basses underneath to kind of accompany it. Then we kind of change from the strings to this. I wrote this up here and then just dragged it down to the woodwind track. So this is going to be a woodwind sound, and then we've kind of got, well, it says mallets there. Why don't we drag that down so it's on the mallets track, so we can have some mallets in at the end. So we've got a combination of different things basically. Well, actually, why don't I duplicate that? So that's, oops, there we go. So now we've got on the mallets layer, we've got one there, we've got woodwind ensemble there. Ignore what it's called here. It's because if it's on that track, that's the sound it's going to make. Which is, anyway, this sounds a bit like this. Oops, system overload. Never mind. Anyway, so you get the idea. Software instruments for writing your own melodies using MIDI, which is this green section here, using the keyboard to kind of compose your melodies. And arpeggiators are a really useful kind of software instrument to kind of thicken out your texture a little bit. So that's it.